Good morning, everybody. I'm Brent Buerck, City Administrator here in Perryville. I've been asked to do the educational piece of this program, but it's not a city program. It's actually a county-led program. The commissioners at the back table, but the city is a very active partner in this, and you'll see why. So the question before you is Prop C.O.P.S, courts, operations, police, and sheriff, and we'll explain that more. So Governing Magazine, I just found this in February, but a couple things stand out. Significantly, after 30 or 40 years of use, jail cells deteriorate, and an average jail cell is about $100,000 when you add it new. The other thing that stands out, if you can see it, in economies of scale, small jails are more expensive to run than large jails, and you can figure out why, but only 1 million or more communities, it's $107, but for fewer than 50,000, obviously that would be us, it gets less than $85. So some of you may remember this facility. It was actually on the parking lot behind Rogers on Spring Street, but this was our jail. It was actually built in 1904, and we used it for 85 years, tore it down in 1993. That cell at the time, there was a spot where the sheriff actually lived there. He kept take care of everybody, but he lived on the facility on site. And even then we struggled. There was no separate compartments in which to confine women or youth. So those were challenges that already, the jail before that, we actually have. Trish is in here, but if you have a special idea in mind, a good project for this could be yours if you got something you want to do with it. See Trish. It is here, it is in Perry County, and it was salvaged.
Brent, put that on. That's cool. I got it over here then. Never mind.
Okay, got it. All right, so the current jail opened in 1989. This first dot point is important. It was designed to hold 16 people, 14 men and 2 women. And that's going to become very important, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But again, it replaced an older jail that only had 13 beds. So in 1903, we built a jail that had 13 beds. 1989, we opened one that had 16 beds. This is the Sheriff's Department now. It was opened in 1989. Just some frame of reference of what's happened in the world, at least the Perry County world. In 1998, Perry County had an assessed value of $190 million. In 2020, it was twice that. In 1987, TG USA opened here in Perryville with about 20 employees. They're now TG Missouri. There's 10 North American locations, and they have 1,800 employees just here in Perryville alone. 1990, our population was a little over 16,600 people. We're projecting plus or minus 20,000. We're kind of got our fingers crossed. 20,000 would be cool. Gilster Mary Lee added a 96,000 square foot warehouse and truck garage. Emmanuel Luther completely tore down their school and rebuilt a new one. Perry County Memorial Hospital has added several offices, an emergency room, and a pharmacy. District 32 is undergoing a campus-wide rehabilitation and remodeling and reconstruction. And Bank of Missouri back then was Bank of Perryville with one location on the state, about $80 million in assets. They're pushing probably 35 locations and almost $3 billion in assets now. So life has changed, even in Perryville and Perry County. 1989, I told you our design capacity was for 14 men, 2 women. You can see over the years, those are just snapshots that fit on one slide, but you can see where we've ebbed and flowed. And shortly after opening, we were already at double capacity. You know, we're running 34 people, plus or minus, but the big challenge here, guys, the number presents one challenge, but look at the women that we're holding now. So that's a lot different. We built a spot to hold 2 women, and we're holding 6, 7, and 8 women on a day, and that is a challenge. The police department in 1991 had about 21 employees, made 700 arrests. We're at 32 employees and about 50% more arrests, 10 or 1,060. Our 911 dispatch had 42,000 calls for service last year. Now the police and the sheriff count calls for service a little bit different. If you have an accident that involves 4 cars, all 4 of those people call 911, that would count as 1 call. But if car number 2 said, my neck hurts, I need an ambulance, that would add another call. If call number 3 said, I need a fire truck, my car's on fire, each additional call for service counts as another call. The sheriff's department are unduplicated, but they had almost 17,000 more. So between the two organizations, however you count them, we had 60,000 calls for services at 911 last year. 1996, the patrolmen, we had 9. 1920, we had 16. So the jail has doubled in capacity, but it's also doubled in staffing. This was probably the most telling statistic for me. If you look at 1990, we had 425 cases filed with the prosecutor's office. Our prosecutor is here this morning, Caitlin Hay. In 2020, we had 1,836. So 4 times more cases have been filed with the prosecutor's office here in Perry County in those last 30 years. This is the administrative space of the current jail. This empty hallway, you think that's pretty sufficient, that's a nice size. But look at it when you put just 3 people in there, how tight it gets and how full it gets. The door actually broke the day I was there to take pictures. That was not intentional, it just happened. But it was very happenstance for us because that illustrates the challenges that we're up against. These are the detective offices in the patrol room. Each detective office houses 2 detectives. So if Jason, who is also here as a detective, wants to interview somebody, his partner has to move out of the office and go find something else to do while he brings them into that facility to do the interview. If your office or my office is full of weapons, it's full of staplers and pencil sharpeners, all those things that can be used as a weapon, and we're bringing people in there who are already known for making bad choices, and we're asking them to sit there calmly and answer questions they don't want to answer. This is the patrol room. Again, it was designed for 9 people. We got twice that many now. Right outside of the detectives, you can see there's a door that says exit. Literally, people can run out of the detective offices during an interview and get out of the street. A modern facility, guys, would have multiple levels, multiple doors between confinement and freedom, and we're not set up like that. The building features in general, 1989, it doesn't seem that long ago, but who had a computer, who had a smartphone, who had a tablet, who had 13 of them in their house if you count what your kids got? That just wasn't what we thought of when we built this facility. So computers were not prevalent, it was not constructed or considered and designed for computers. There's no connections or ports for data, there's no conduit for installation. The squad room is missing. There's no joint room for joint meetings. The offices we have are double filled already. And there's no secure interview room. So we've talked already about bringing, this is actually Shay. She does a great job. She's the lead dispatch, but that's her workspace. A kitchen designed to serve 16 people was built for 16 people. That's a big challenge now. This is our kitchen, so we're trying to make twice the meals it was designed to prepare. So, the mechanical room has been converted. They've done these things out of necessity, and I'll show you why, but there's no storage. Delbert, how many closets do you guys have when we open that facility down there? 0. So you got to put food somewhere. So this is the mechanical room. This is the electrical panel. By code, it should be 4 or 6 feet away. You should have room for safety. Right in front of there is our food pantry. Right behind there is another mechanical room with the water softener, but also that little bitty freezer. You know, think of the freezer you have in your house or freezers you have at your house just for your family. We got that little bitty college style one for all the prisoners that are there. There's a water leak right here. This is the pantry I showed you, but right behind that was the electrical panel. There's a fire alarm system right here. So all that's already in there. This is where the IT is brought in. So we had this hardened facility that we had to cut holes all over so we can bring conduit and bring wires to it. This is what it looks like, and it's right in the middle of that dispatch office I showed you previously. 911 was not existent when we built this facility. So we didn't design it. It wasn't built to hold 911. So we had to retrofit a room that's probably about half this size. It's supposed to be the control center for the jail where you can open and close doors and you can observe all the rooms. We cut it in half almost immediately and put 911 dispatch on one side of it. So that's what our dispatch center looks like. There's usually 2 women working in there, or 2 guys, whatever it is, but 2 people. And when you get into dispatch, you're in there for your 8 hours. So you go in there and you don't come out till you leave. So we had to go back in and add a bathroom. And they tried to cut it into the basement. But you retrofit a building and you have problems with retrofitting a building. So it leaks. I've been told that sometimes there's water an inch deep on the floor after a hard rain because it just soaks through and soaks in. But that's where our dispatch are asked to work and keep us safe at. There's mold issues present. This is the other side of that room I said we put the wall in. This is their largest meeting for squad rooms. So in a world of COVID, you're trying to fit 16 people in that small room. The kitchen manager's in there, but that's the biggest space that they have left to meet. So this is the lobby. If you walk in the front of the jail, this door takes you straight back into the booking area. So it's, again, there's not multiple doors between confinement and safety or freedom. Once you walk through that door, this is what you'd see. On the right side is the little bench with 2 areas for handcuffing. That's where your booking is. This is supposed to be our secure room for folks that are at danger to themselves or others. But because of the lack of privacy, we've had to cover it up. This is storage for mattresses. And this same hallway has underneath that cover is our breathalyzer. This is that room. Again, once you put a couple bodies in there, a couple adult male bodies in particular, it fills up incredibly quick. Underneath that towel, I said, was our booking machine, but also our DWI. That's where we breathalyze people. So there's limited intake space, and just a single bench. Same hallway has the breathalyzer in it. There's no place for attorney-client visits, video arraignments. Those activities are having to take place in staff offices. So in theory, a judge can meet with somebody in the jail without even having to do it. You can do it by video conferencing. We don't have spaces for that, so we're back to using staff offices again. Our administrative staff at the jail have to move out of their offices so we can bring the inmates in to do a video conference with their judge. There is one visitation room, but we don't do in-person visits anymore. I understand occasionally it's used to hold folks or for attorney-client visits. I think they still get to happen in person and in full contact. This is the booking room. You can see this little small space, but you can see that green wall. We had to cut a hole in there to get to files. And even since I took these pictures, the Sheriff's Department has added through the help of the County Commission, but if you go to the airport, those full body scanners when you walk in, we have one of those now. We literally had to cut holes in the wall just so we could put that security system in there. It's a tight space. Laundry facilities for the entire facility. All the sheriff's deputies and jailers actually do the laundry. That was something I learned in this process. And then we also have personal lockers for the inmates, their effects. This is that same holding area. You can see the breathalyzer here on my left. To the right is that security, that single person cell we had talked about. But in that same hallway is our restraint chair. So when you're really having a bad day and you're hurting yourself or others, we have a restraint chair. But ours is right in the middle of the hallway where we do the booking at. So the majority of our inmates, guys, are pretrial detainees. They haven't been found guilty or innocent yet. They're being held on felony charges, though, often for drugs or murder at that. Of course, we get the occasional murderer or sexual offender or violent offender. But most of our folks are drugs and theft type offenses. But the challenge within that is we only have one level of care. So the same guy that's working DWI work release, and then we don't have a level of care to keep him separate from the guy that's in there for hurting people or killing people or raping people. We've talked about our daily count, but at times we have 50 or 60 inmates in that same jail that was originally designed to open for 16 people. So they're very creative and they're doing everything they can. Almost immediately they had to double bunk it. They converted a small conference room into a dorm style cell. So they've done everything they could to make it fit in here. Couldn't necessarily bring every one of you into the jail at the time, but they will offer, if you want to see it for yourself, you can call down there and get a tour. But we're going to try to bring the jail to you now. This is the main holding area. On either side, you can see the 2 open doors. Those are shower facilities. But the problem is the showers weren't designed with ventilation in mind. So we're running 35 people through on showers with no way to vent that heat and humidity out. So it's creating a lot of problems. If you're on the cell side looking out, this is what that looks like. draw your attention to that tarp behind that window, and I'll tell you why that's an important feature real quick. These are the bathrooms themselves. You can see the rust and the mildew and the mold problems that we've been having. Not that long ago, I got a call from a community advocate in St. Louis who was talking about mold lung and the problems that they were indicated that there are people coming back to St. Louis were complaining about our jail. The county commission got that same call. So I pointed out the tarps a while ago. We literally have hung tarps that you would cover up wood in your house or your backyard with to separate the men from the women. If you can imagine men and women in a confined situation, they do things that you don't want them doing. They show each other different things, they send notes, they communicate. So our guys had to put tarps up so we could put some kind of level, some kind of barrier, line of sight barrier between where our men are at and where our women are at. So the limited options we have to place inmates, it's a challenge whenever you have a spot designed for 2 women and you got 8 in there. So then you got to move them where the men are at. So then you got to move those men. We'll go in more of that. There's no mental health room. Some people would call it a padded room, but for somebody who really wants to hurt themselves, we don't have that safety room. We don't have a dry room. So a lot of people ingest drugs or even weapons. They'll hide them in places. We just have to put them in a room with a bathroom. If we had a dry room, which essentially wouldn't have a toilet, we could make sure to find those things whenever it's passed. You can find those items that they're trying to sneak in. And we don't have a medical room, and that's one of the things that stands out the most. So if you're in our jail and you fake being sick, we have to take you out to the hospital. And there'll be the hospital room next to your grandma or next to your dad or your kid. But then we also have to pull deputies off the street and have them assigned to sit right outside that jail or that hospital bed to keep everybody safe and to keep that person up there. So at the point you can pretend to be sick and get out of jail, it becomes a viable option for a lot of people. This is the women's holding facility right now. You can see even with all those beds, there's 6 beds. We got mattresses on the floor, and the day I was down there, we had an 8th woman who was in that private room because she wasn't able to get along with the others at the time. But this is that 2-person cell that was originally designed for our women. So we moved the women out of the 2-person cell, put them in that other cell, that bigger cell, and then we have to move the men into here. This is our recreational yard. It looks like it'd be secure with the razor wire, and to some degree it is. We did have an escape attempt come out of there several years ago. But the challenge here is that it's open to the outside. So if you want to throw something outside to your buddy who's inside, you have that ability. You have the ability to cut a tennis ball, stuff it with drugs, chuck it over, they can find it on rec room. So this has happened. I understand this is a football that was actually made out of socks that was for rec time. But a lot of the times the challenges are still real. You can see a tennis ball stuck up there. Our Sally Port area is also a challenge. So a Sally Port, if you've never had the pleasure of being arrested and brought to jail, it's supposed to be a clean room where you can pull in the deputy's car, close the door so you're secure, but then bring him out in a safe way to get him into the booking area and ultimately into the jail. Our Sally Port's full of tools, equipment, storage cabinets. It provides direct access to the evidence closet. And that same Sally Port that we get people into jail with, we have to use to get them out of jail when we go to the court. This is that same Sally Port from a different view. You can see shovels and ladders. There's a toolbox back here with hammers in it, screwdrivers. But our guys are doing the best they can, and this time they were working on a vehicle, trying to do some of the maintenance themselves in that space. Directly in front of that car, as I said, was the evidence locker. So our courthouse. So what would happen with our courthouse is a good question. It's a fair question. The county and the city worked together in 2017 to do a major remodel of that courthouse. But at that time, we fixed the bones of the building. We did things like tuck pointing and windows and roofs and HVAC systems. The floors were painted, the walls were redone. A couple of security cameras were added. But really, that was the extent of the security enhancements that we were able to do on a building that's on the National Registry of Historic Places and is almost 120 years old. This was last Friday. Kayla, wherever she's at, she may have even seen this out her door. We had 14 people at one time that had to go from our jail to court. There's 2 vehicles that they were unloaded from. I got circles on them. We had 3 staff to transport people to our main street. This is the main street side. Kayla's office is right on the other side here. But we had to bring them all from jail, organize them, get them loaded in vans and cars, bring them to the courtroom, get them out on the street, escort them up into the courtroom on our town square, and get them to court for their different hearings. This is again.
It's a view for all the stop clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our downtown, the question is that the downtown we want to have and we want to foster? But these are the public areas, so, the challenge is the inmates are within shouting distance of family, or even victims, heaven forbid, or their accomplices. We don't have the ability to separate the general public from the people that are there for making bad choices. These are the housing rooms. So these are located behind the courtroom, behind the judges. We got a very small one for women, a very small one for men, but there's no bathroom facilities. And I understand, and I was reminded again last night, that inmates have literally used the floors for their restroom when they needed to do that, because there's no other option. How do you take one of these guys away, leave 12 behind, get them to the bathroom? So that those are challenges of a facility the age we have. So what's being asked, April 6th, again, it's a countywide tax initiative, but it would impose a half-cent sales tax for 20 years. After 20 years, it would sunset, it would fall off, but 1/8 would stand on to help maintain a building. If we've learned anything about buildings, 20 years later, you have to do things to buildings. You have to put roofs on them, you have air conditioning problems. You have to maintain it. So this one tax, we believe, would do both of those things. And that's the question being asked to the voters. Now is a great time. If you look at this chart, it shows you what interest rates have done for government loans. In 1990, we were 7.5%, got almost to 8% shortly after, but now we're right around 2.5%. So this is a cheap time to get money. Construction materials, as we're finding on our sewer plant, are not cheap right now, but hopefully that'll level out as the country continues to open. This is just a possible rendering. I guarantee this is not exactly what it looks like, but everybody wants to know what it could look like. So this is what that would be. You can see on the far right is your Sally Port, and then your jail entry and exit right next to it. But then the concept is you come in a main entry, on either side you have the police and the sheriff's department. Behind it you have a dispatch, which would be hardened. Neither of our facilities are hardened right now for an F5 tornado. The public school's done a good job adding several of those storm shelters. We do not have that. So if either facility would take a direct hit, we would lose 911 communications. This is just a close-up of the main part. The court services would be on the top. Again, you'd enter this main lobby. We would, in theory, have a receptionist there working half for the city, half for the county. We're sharing resources. You need to see the police chief, you're on the left, the sheriff, you're on the right. Behind that would be these large conference rooms. I talked about the challenges at the sheriff's department. There'd be a conference room roughly this size for both departments, but then we'd have an accordion wall in the middle where we could open it up and we could have joint team meetings between the sheriff's department and the police department. We would facilitate the break room in the back where we could have water cooler conversations just by happenstance. The pass down between shifts could happen with the police and the sheriff at the same time. You could communicate better. Our detectives could communicate with their detectives. What did you guys see this weekend? What's going on your side? Behind that break room then would be the jail administration. The green area at the far end is the jail itself. And then this purple area is a Sally Port, but also the dry room we talked about, the medical room we talked about, the safe room for those folks that are wanting to hurt themselves. Upstairs, so now instead of getting you out of your cell, putting you into a car on a Sally Port, bringing you up to the square, walking you through our downtown into jail, and put you in a back room, we'd have a secure elevator where we could take you from your secure cell through a secure hallway to a secure elevator to the top, to your courtroom, and then we could take you back down the same way, avoiding all that interaction. It would be designed for 2 courtrooms. It would have prosecutor services. Jennifer Hotop was here earlier. She's the circuit clerk. She would also be staffed in there. The judges' chambers would be in the back. So everything would be in the same building for efficiency's sake. With that, I take any questions that you guys might have. Yeah, Jennifer.
What are you gonna do with the buildings?
Good question. Good question. So the police department, we're not here because we need a new police department. We built that 2 years before I got here, so 2007, I believe. We just put a roof on it. It still fits the chief and everybody's in there. But it does have value. It's got a good location. And we're working with a government partner who's interested in buying that. I do not have a contract signed. But if we can negotiate with that partner directly, they would pay appraised value. They would take possession and move into it. The sheriff's department, talking with the county commission, the sheriff's probably worth more without the building than it is with the building. It's in that shape. So that one would likely be torn out. But I think we have a buyer. And if not, if that deal falls through, we would work to sell it to a realtor and try to get our value back out of it.
What about the courthouse then?
The courthouse would be moved to non-secure activities. We would still be a center of business. The recorder of deeds would still be in there. The public administrator would still be in there. But we might be able to orient offices better for efficiency. Right now, we got offices separated by hallways. So you would do non-secure things in the courthouse. You would try to open it up. Jared's done a good job explaining. We would want to open it back up to the people, make it the people's building. It could be archives right now. Archives are kept off-site. We could bring that back in. It could ultimately be a museum or something. Trish could work with something creative to do there, but it would somehow turn back to being the people's building. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
So in the new rendering, how many inmates can you hold?
So if we get that far, and we'll see what we do, what you guys decide we get to do. We'll do an evaluation to make sure we right size it. Normally, jails are designed in units of 16. You have 8 on top, 8 on bottom. So you have 16, 32, 48, 64, and likewise. But you would put your control center back in the middle. One of the challenges of our current facility is if you have somebody who wants to flood their cell, they can do that. And we can't shut off water service to their cell. In a modern jail, you could shut off individuals, you could turn lights off, you could control a lot of the tomfoolery just by having all that in there. But I would say 16 is too little, 32 maybe right size, 48, we'll look at that. But if we get that far, that'll be the next level of analysis, exactly how many do we need.
But you will construct it to add on in the future.
Yes, that's a great point, Pat.
Yeah.
You can see this. It's designed with corridors, so nobody, certainly not myself, but anybody else that sits in my shoes would have to sell you another building or talk to you about another building. You could just drop on another unit in the back. In 50 years, if we need it, we could do that.
Possible locations?
We're looking at several different locations. That's up for debate. We don't know. There's different reasons that go different places. We've spoke to folks on the fringe of the industrial park. We spoke to folks along the bypass, and we've actually found a property that would fit in downtown as well. So we don't know exactly where it's going yet, but we would do an analysis, cost development, all those kinds of things.
Get it passed first.
Yeah, but it would certainly have to be in the city limits of Perryville.
This might be a question for you, Jared, but if that money from those sales, is that going to offset the project? Does that go this into like general operating funds? Is that like separated between the county and the city?
The sales of the properties that like the city of Perryville building and our building. I envision a place where I can't say what the city would do, but I believe they paid for that building that would go back into their coffers. This would be a county facility. So far as the sale of or possible sale of the sheriff's department property, that would go into county coffers and could be used for that purpose, yes, to offset the project. But that we may work with other partners that are directly in that area that may have interest in that property if we get to that point. So and that could be a gifting thing where we're working with another county entity or something of that nature.
I see another hand. Maybe not. You know, some of the big things that we've done in the last several years, If you live in the city, I think 2017, you guys voted, we asked the question, can we get rid of our city collector and merge it with the county collector? The folks said, yeah, that makes sense. Let's have one person do the job for both people. In January, we actually did the same thing with municipal court. A lot of you may not even be aware, but we no longer have municipal court at City Hall. We merged that with Judge Brewer and the court system in the county. They run our municipal court. So again, we're looking for ways to create efficiencies between the departments. And our challenge this time, guys, is we can't do, this actually started, Wayne Wallingford, our senator in Cape Girardeau at the time, carried some legislation on 911 and dispatch. And the intention spelled out in that legislation is to start, the state wants us to merge dispatch units. And that's how we started this conversation. Right now, every computer we buy, they're buying. Every staff we're paying, they're paying. How can we be more efficient? And then we got into that, and then, you know, the county commissioner wisdom said, look, if we're gonna do this, let's do it right. I figured a building, honestly, with 7 to 10 years down the road, we'd go in steps, but there's clearly a need. We went down, we visited with Jason and Delbert and the sheriff, and we toured the facility itself. And we don't have a responsibility to make the bad guys more comfortable, the people that are being put in jail, but we have an obligation to keep the good guys safe. And then when we went through it together, those were things that we saw that we could do a better job in many cases of keeping the good guys safe. And some of the challenges in their safety or to their safety are based on the facility itself. We looked at that, and Mike said very well, you know, our problem doesn't go away if the folks decide that this isn't the right solution, which is entirely possible. The problem that I just showed you doesn't go away for the sheriff's department. The solution of a joint operating center between the police and sheriff probably does, but the county's still going to have a problem that they're going to have to figure out how to fix. And the first time we built this building, I say we, but I obviously wasn't here. I was trying to avoid being in jail at that time. But you know, the efforts they did as a county commission was to take every dollar they could find and the cushions and the seat, you know, wherever they could, and they built that. We didn't go to the people for a vote that first time, and part of that's reflected in the building we were able to afford then. So the idea here is if we're gonna do it, let's do it right, let's do it one time. Our current sales tax, which is a question I figured I would get, but maybe you guys already know, it's 7.875. If we add a half cent to it, it brings us to 8.475, which is lower than St. Jim, but it's spot on in Cape. And I know a lot of us, you know, my wife included, sometimes we have to go to Cape to go shopping. So that's what we're paying when we shop in Cape Girardeau right now today is 8.475. And actually, they just passed a half cent sales tax in April of last year for their supporting of law enforcement. So what we're doing is just putting our sales tax at the same place. So whenever you buy something here, you support the project.
Why is a sales tax better than, say, a property tax?
Sales tax better because visitors pay sales tax. Visitors to the city, you know, it's almost a 50%, 51% of visitors that are not city residents pay city taxes. It's not quite as high on the county side, but they also come in. Property is kind of sacred. Property taxes for the schools, and we've done a good job. You know, a couple of years ago we were here and we passed the first school sales tax in 40 years. But schools usually run on property taxes, cities run on sales tax. It's a consumption tax, so the more you spend, the more you pay. If you're an older lady, which is always a challenge, or you're living by yourself, you don't pay as much of that tax. The people that are spending help
So
support.
people coming into our community every day, buying a cup of coffee or whatever they're doing, they're helping us to support our profit.
You know, that's a great, your cup of coffee is a good example. $2 cup of coffee will cost an extra penny if this passes. So it's a small number in the grand scheme of things. Other questions? Kelly, you got a question?
Okay.
All right, I appreciate you guys listening. I had one more other comment. This concludes this one. Scott and Pam and others had worked as a community, and they were selected for one of 4 National Center for Mobility Management Transportation grants. So it was Perryville, Missouri, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. So there's been a lot of work for several months led by Pam and a small team of folks on how do we improve transportation in our community. You know, a lot of us, we have the luxury of cars or multiple vehicles. But what do you do when you don't have that luxury, or if you only have one car and it's in the shop? How do you still get yourself to work? These are challenges that a lot of us haven't had to endure, but they are very real in our community and very well known to the social service agencies. So we had a breakfast with the social service agencies last week, Pam. And there's a business lunch next Monday in the same building at noon. If you're interested, if you have input, if you're an employer that sometimes your biggest challenge isn't getting employees, but it's helping them get to work, these are the things that they're trying to work to create or to correct. So Scott Sadler, you can RSVP if you're available. Did I miss anything, Pam?
No.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, on behalf of the committee, we have 3 options, and we're just trying to narrow those options down, and we want your opinion on that. But please let me know by tomorrow, because I've got to order the food for Monday.
Very good.
And one more time.
Yeah, Becky Paulus is the chair of the Prop C.O.P.S, so my job is just to do the education piece, not advocating. There's a political action committee essentially that's been formed. Scott's a member there. They have some memorabilia, but Becky Paulus, who was our 22-year circuit clerk, she's the chair of that. Kim Schnurbush, who was on the news in KFBS 12 last night, is the treasurer. And then Scott's on there and a couple other people. But I think they have some stuff. Scott, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, so I have some limited t-shirts here that like Alex is modeling for or something. And then I have yard signs. Please come and get some yard signs and t-shirts. And also we have a Facebook page. Please go on there, like that, share that. We're putting out information about this Prop C.O.P.S on there. Please get on there and share that with the community.
There was an ad in last week's newspaper. It had Superman flanked by the police and the sheriff and the judge and the prosecutor and the circuit clerk. You know, and the tagline they're using is a home for our heroes. So that's what you'll see more and more of that stuff. But also the county commission is here again. This is their project. Mike, Keith, and Jay, thank you. We got members from the police department. Chief Hunt's here. And then also Delbert and Jason are here from the Sheriff's Department. Caitlin's on the side from the Prosecutor's Office. Don't take my word for it. If you want to see it, talk to these guys, ask them questions, how this impacts them now and in the future. But that concludes everything I got. Thank you guys for the great turnout.
I want to thank everyone again for coming. Brent has done an awesome job. I've seen this 2 or 3, 4 times, but I learned something new every time. And we did go through the Sheriff's Department 2 years ago, and I can vouch it's rough. If you get the chance, go down there and take the tour. Thank our county commissioners for getting this together, Brent for doing all the education for that. The Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors is proud to back the Prop C.O.P.S. Again, don't forget to take things for your yard and t-shirts to wear. And if you want to take a look, we are vamping up our events for this year. We will be having Mayfest. We are working diligently with all of correct agencies to put on a safe Mayfest, a fun Mayfest. Everybody we talk to is ready for it, so we're excited for that. Before that, April is our Business Expo. If you've never been to one of those, they're very informative. We are going to have it down at the Legion, so we are going to have more room, so we'll have plenty of room for everybody. So watch your emails and your snail mails for that information. And also, we are excited to support our board member, Alex Leaders, who is running for the Perry County Health Department. That will also be on the April ballot. So we appreciate her taking that time to dedicate her service to our county. She was our past president for 2 years, so we appreciate her for that. Again, we are not having another Coffee and Connections, sadly though, until September. We will having our power hours in between them. September is our school. We always have a big one for that too, so we hope to see you all there. And again, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and everybody have a great day.
See you. Take care.